115th contact, Thursday, October 19, 1978, 6:04 p.m., pages 215, 295. Semyaza says, you have given me worries, my dear friend. You shouldn't have refused to come to a meeting. But not only was I worried but also my father and Quetzal as well as all the others. Therefore, father has also come along today. Billy says, I understand you already, but there was simply no other option for me. I first had to have various things clarified, before I could see you again. Pata says, if I understand correctly, you want to say with this that you would have never held to the contacts anymore if the things hadn't been clarified. Billy says, exactly, Pata, so it was meant by me. Semyaza says, are you serious? Billy says, certainly. Semyaza says, you could have simply done that without further explanations. Billy says, certainly. Semyaza says, I don't understand that. Again and again, you give me new riddles. Pata says he really would have done that, and I also know why. Quetzal says, I am also of this view. Semyaza says, but why then? I don't understand that. After all, he would have destroyed everything. Pata says that would have been the case, but it would have also had its justification. Consider, my child, that already for a long time, our friend has sought to explain all possible instructive knowledge to his friends and members of the group and to make them knowing through this, but over and over again, and this already for years, very serious failures arise, which are solely due to the fact that, completely deliberately, ones act contrary to his explanations. In various cases, it even happens over and over again that, completely deliberately, the teaching presented to them about this is ignored because they, with their personal egoism and jealousy, cannot agree with it, as this is also the case with various other matters of an emotional nature and material desires and other things. And since this has already been going on in such a way for years, the measure quite simply had to become full once, and our friend had to take self-protection measures. That's why he acted in such a way and would have also truly broken off contact with us if something grave hadn't changed. That's how I see these things. Is this right, my friend? Billy says, you hit the nail right on the head. Quetzal says, I have also seen the same. Semyaza says, now I understand, and I honestly have to say to this, that very much more was expected of you, my dear friend, and was laid on you in tasks, works, and obligations than what a human being is really able to bear. But nevertheless, you have taken everything upon yourself without ever murmuring and have fulfilled your duties, though sometimes also somewhat delayed. But still, you have always completed everything and have even done much more than what you actually should do, as we know this now. Indeed, we weren't able to recognize these things properly for some time and, thus, also didn't understand, but then the cognition also spread out in us. And if you have now acted in this way, that you didn't appear at our contacts, even though we prompted you to them several times recently, then I understand it now and can give you no reproach. The whole thing is obviously such as what Father has stated, that you simply couldn't continue anymore because various members of the group always acted incorrectly, and everything had to be so tiring for you. I honestly have to say that I myself would have never borne everything for so long in this way, and that very much more was added to you in works, obligations, and tasks than what a human being is able to cope with. Another human being in your position would have already collapsed after a few weeks or months and either wouldn't have recovered from his collapse or, if he did, wouldn't have continued his task. Pata says, I am also of this view. Quetzal says that is of correctness. Semyaza says, surely. Billy says so, and I am not asked about this at all. I find that your words go a bit beyond observations and are, perhaps, aimed at pepping me up morally, so that I will continue in the old trot. Everything sounds so damn much like adulation that I can't close my mind to this impression. The truth is simply this: it has been on the notice board for me, and I didn't want to get in contact with you again or continue everything anymore under any circumstances, if 2 or 3 important things hadn't changed in our group. In particular, something was in my gut, which I had already explained umpteen times over and over again in the group, but this simply didn't want to be accepted, so namely the problem with love, concerning which views prevail in certain group members, which cannot be reconciled with the truth and reality, which is why I have now also wedged myself behind explaining the law of love thoroughly once with a small writing. See here, these pages, these contain my draft relating to this, for which I would be very happy if one of you could still study this today, in order then to tell me whether or to what extent everything is right and what still needs to be changed in it. Quetzal says that is good. I will take your writing to hand, if you want to give it to me. Billy says of course, here. Many thanks for your trouble. Quetzal says you owe me no thanks, but hear what I would first like to explain to you, my friend, and I have finally succeeded in designing and constructing the apparatus intended for you, according to which you are to come to me once every 8 days starting from next week, in order to let yourself be treated. Billy says okay, quite dear, thanks for that, also to your friend. But while I'm already at it, I still have a question concerning the Sohar Center. You once told me recently that you have automated everything in the control disk, according to which after a 90-minute resting period of a person, a new storage automatically enters into function again. This information was, unfortunately, given outside of our actual contact conversation, according to which I don't have this in writing now, and thus, it can't be made accessible to the other group members. Hence, could you still quickly explain these things to me once more? Quetzal says that is of correctness, and so I will state the data once again for security for the future and the possibility of a central incarnation. The Sohar Center was built to our specifications by your group members. The Sohar Center, however, holds dangers in itself, in reference to the possibility of dubious use by outsiders and evil-intentioned ones. So that no opportunity is offered to such elements to make use of the Sohar Center for a central incarnation. Everything is to be automated in the future time in such a way that a fluidal force registration becomes totally eliminated right away, as soon as an unauthorized person wants to make use of the center. This automation proceeds from the fact that a certain rotation in the times of use of the Sohar Center must be kept and completed, and that the elimination of the stored forces of the unauthorized person concerned must take place immediately, as soon as an error in the time of use and the rotation appears. In a simply stated and explained way, it looks like this to simplify all things related to the Sohar Center, and so that in the future, all such concerns can be determined by the core group members, without them requiring any data or information from us. Everything became automated on the following data and work values: purely internal group interests and data. In addition, it is still to be explained that the automatic control mechanism built into the control disk isn't functioning in the desired form because some special technological accessories are still to be installed. Thus, the automatic control mechanism still presently functions in the way that with an erroneous occurrence of a new storage that isn't kept in its precisely prescribed values, a total elimination of all stored fluidal forces of all previously registered group members results. But this shouldn't mean any danger if the persons responsible for the Sohar Center adhere to the required times and are always mindful of the fact that the 90 minutes aren't exceeded. Billy says good, then that is now clear. By when do you think that this machine will function completely? Quetzal says by the 2nd or 3rd of November, it should be possible for me that I can still complete everything. Until then, you just have to be careful enough that no errors occur, because I would hardly be able to change them, which means that a new storage would absolutely have to be kept until then, if one would appear. Otherwise, all storages of all group members would become eliminated. I wasn't able to regulate this differently because I have to solve some problems so that, in the future, any negative forces are automatically eliminated if such should go into action through any person in the Sohar Center, and indeed, already upon their delivery, so that the same thing can't happen some other time, as this was the case with Amateur. Billy says I find that good, then in the future, a very serious problem is, indeed, solved through this. Quetzal says that is of correctness. We must be able to be absolutely certain in the future that such degeneracies or the like won't happen anymore, which is why I have to change everything. Many group members have given me occasion to act in such a way because I had to find out, through their thoughts and actions, that everything isn't addressed and done with sufficient seriousness, and that everything is often even willfully handled in a malicious manner. Thus, it has arisen that all possible safety precautions are truly not only appropriate but also necessary. Billy says you're probably right about that, unfortunately. Quetzal says it is of correctness, I know, But now, I will devote myself to your writing, while you shall be oriented by Semyaza and Patar about many future events, as I promised you at our last contact. Billy says okay, then just go ahead. Semyaza says you may not make too premature public use of the data and remarks that my father and I will give you now and, therefore, may not disseminate them only in your group but not in the public. Billy says certainly not, I can really be silent. Patar says that is well known to us, for otherwise, we wouldn't give you any information. Billy says how is it, then, with this may I hand over that which has already happened to the group members in each case? I mean, may I publish the relevant contact pages in each case when the events recorded on them have happened or when the coming events are forthcoming shortly? Patar says that is granted to you. 2 or 3 days before the arrival of the events, you may openly inform the group members about the impending events and, thus, may give them everything in writing. Semyaza says sure, for then they can't cause any damage anymore with the written reports. Billy says good, thanks, that's really something. Semyaza says before I initiate you into these things, I would still like to ask you a favor, which moves me very much. If you come back into the situation that you no longer endure all things, then please don't interrupt your contact with me. Please be aware, always and under all circumstances, that I am your friend and will always try to understand you, even if you don't want to continue everything anymore if you should truly decide on that, but I don't exactly hope now that you will do that. Even if you would lay everything down from yourself, you should have the assurance that I wouldn't want to break off the contacts with you, and certainly neither would Father or Quetzal. You should, therefore, be clear to yourself about the fact that even after a laying down of your task, our friendship and connection would continue to exist. I still wanted to tell you this. Billy says that's very kind of you, girl, and it is. Damn. Patar says my daughter speaks from my heart. It really should be like that if sometime you no longer continue, which we don't want to hope for, however. Quetzal says that is also of correctness for me, because I join this thought in every respect. Billy says thanks, I thank you all. You can really get to my kidneys, damn it again. Semyaza says you are unchangeable, even in your emotions. Patar says that is so, and your cannibal should also finally become aware of that. You are not to be changed, in any matters. Greet her cordially for me, but tell her that she should think thoroughly about herself and you once, then she will understand much better. I have found out various things through some analyses, and that's why I say that. At the same time, unfortunately, I also had to note some very deplorable things on her part. Billy says I can already piece some things together. Semyaza says sure, because you are, indeed, right at the source, only that this sometimes gives quite bitter waters from itself. But nevertheless, greet her also for me, and tell her that I carry her with me in love. Billy says you say that very beautifully, my child. By the way, I am to give you all the dearest greetings from all group members and also from some others. Semyaza says quite dear thanks for that, and also greet them all for me. Patar says that should also be the case from my side. I wish everyone good welfare and much joy. Quetzal says I don't want to stand back there with. Pay all my dear and cordial greetings as well. Billy says I will do that, but may I quickly bother you once again, Quetzal? Quetzal says do you have a question? Billy says I do, my son. You know that I have a new typewriter, and I would like to try to type the contact reports with this in the future. Would it be possible, perhaps, that you could do something, so that I can do this? You know that all the other machines are out of the house, which means that I practically don't use them anymore and have passed them on and now other people type on them. Quetzal says I understand. You can only use these apparatuses with difficulty because they have somehow become foreign to you, and due to other people working with them, the mechanics have shifted, whereby you would have difficulties. Billy says exactly, that's it. Do you also have the same problems, then, with yourselves? Semyaza says sure. Billy says aha, is that perhaps also one of the reasons that all or at least many of you have your own beam ships? Quetzal says that is the true reason, that is of correctness. We use other apparatuses that aren't adjusted to us of every type only if some circumstances require this. Billy says, aha.